An application for today's passage seems to write itself. In chapter 9, verse 9, Isaiah described a people who were filled with pride and arrogance. In verse 13, he called them a people who were unwilling to turn to Jehovah. Instead, this evil people, citing verse 13, had set up elders and prophets for themselves who guided them in the wrong direction, and they honored these men. These leaders, we read in chapter 10, verse 1, were the type who would write their own ungodly laws, leading to the oppression of the people, and a pattern of self-defeating evil, which would eventually destroy the nation. Has anyone ever heard that story before? It sounds very familiar to me. Painfully familiar. It sounds exactly like what is happening in America right now and all across the Western world as well. What happened? Well, we have a people who are filled with pride and arrogance. We have a growing number of people who believe that there is no God and that they are the master of their own destiny. And even among those who do believe in God, there is a large number of people who, in their profound self-importance, suppose that they ought to ignore God's laws. They'll tell you that they should only do that which is in the New Testament, thus ignoring the first 80% of the book. Of course, while they want to pretend that they are getting rid of the law, knowing that they must have some moral code, they are actually just replacing the law with whatever tradition of men they might dream up. And so this has given rise to the false doctrine of secularism generally, and more narrowly, secular humanism. The Western world has openly abandoned its Christian roots in favor of setting up a godless government. Where the Bible always advocates a government with God as the final authority, the United States has only the people as the final authority. They vote for leaders to represent them, having no religious test for public office. And when those leaders take them astray, they gladly follow, exactly as this passage describes. These leaders presume to make their own set of laws which are contrary to God's laws, writing oppression, as the passage calls it, decreeing iniquitous decrees. I know there are some false teachers out there who will tell you that you are obligated to, quote, obey the law of the land, end quote. Well, let Isaiah 10, 1 through 2 put that argument to rest for you. There are iniquitous decrees which you ought not to obey. There is a writing of oppression which you ought not to tolerate. The examples are many. We've got Hindus unabashedly worshiping a giant monkey man idol in Texas, and no one is stopping them. We've got women in liberal states across the U.S. murdering their babies. We've got a government that will steal anything and everything for any purpose, no matter how absurd. We've got a government school system that teaches the children they all evolved from apes. We've got so-called family courts that will separate the husband and the wife and take custody of the children. We've got state-sanctioned fornication and adultery and homosexuality. We've got women in positions of leadership. We've got police officers and prosecutors committing perjury in open court and facing no consequences because the laws don't apply evenly to everyone. And if you honestly practice Christianity, you've got a good chance of ending up behind bars, as I myself have demonstrated more than once. We could go on. The laws of the secular state are bad, and the people who tell you that you are obligated to obey them are worse. Your government is a stench in God's nostrils. No reasonable person could deny it, and if you try to deny it, you frankly make yourself look ignorant and silly. So we've got the arrogant people who think that they know better than God. We've got the bad leadership lacking in God's authority. We've got the bad laws that come from them, and we've got the oppression of the people that flows from that in droves. We see the result of it in broken lives all around us. We've got a culture full of broken families and fatherless children, a massive wealth gap between rich and poor, 100,000 innocent people sitting in prison, a mountain of dead babies, millions tall, people suffering sexual abuse, no one getting justice anywhere, and government officials getting rich off the backs of the working people. No one can deny this. Now, I'm sure there's not a one-to-one correlation here. Modern Americans are, I would hope, at least somewhat more faithful than ancient Israel was. But the elements are all there. And so if God was going to punish Israel with complete destruction as a nation, killing them in war and sending their remnant off to slavery in foreign lands never to return, I can see little reason that modern Americans ought to have any better fate. I would suppose that Israel had a larger percentage of its people living in opposition to God, or maybe that they had simply been living this way longer. Maybe the sins of their nation were just more extreme than those of modern America. Maybe I'm wrong. But whatever it was that made God unleash his wrath on the northern kingdom while continuing to restrain it against the United States, I think we all should do well to heed the warning. And the warning is this: there is a God, and we are his creatures, and we do not know better than he does. He makes the rules. He has the power to enforce the rules. He has the right to demand that we obey, and the wisdom to make the rules good. We don't make the rules. We have no right to just make up whatever rules we want and then to force others to comply. That very idea in itself would be contrary to God's laws, which forbid that kind of arbitrary violence against others. We have a duty as a God-fearing people to appoint for ourselves God-fearing leaders whom he would approve, and those leaders have a duty to enforce God's laws, and we have a duty to live by God's laws. If we will have the humility to do so, instead of the pride of thinking that we can craft better laws than God can, then we will live rightly. And by living rightly, we can avoid oppressing our neighbors and bringing much misery on ourselves. We can have our greatest peace, prosperity, health, and happiness in life. Alternatively, we can ignore that, and we can suppose that we know better than God, and we can destroy ourselves with injustice and oppression. We can live in strife and poverty and illness and misery, and then, for the sake of rescuing the world from us, God can overthrow us and destroy us. The choice is yours. As Moses told his people in Deuteronomy 30:15-16, "See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways, and by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it." The choice between life and death is before you. I urge you to choose life.